Frank Donnelly stood on his porch that December morning, coffee steam rising in the cold air, watching his son shovel snow off the old pickup. 25 years old now, Tommy moved easy. Strong shoulders, quick laugh when the shovel slipped. Hard to believe this was the same boy who couldn't walk 10 steps without his lungs giving out. 15 years. That's how long it had been since Dale and Lori walked away. 15 years of midnight drives to the ER, of watching Tommy fight for every breath, of being so tired. Frank sometimes forgot what day it was, but they'd made it. The boy was healthy, going to graduate school. They'd survived. Then Frank heard the engine. He knew that sound before his brain caught up. Expensive, smooth, wrong for this gravel road. The coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. Across the driveway, Tommy turned, squinting at the vehicle pulling in. "Dad?" Tommy called. "Who's that?" Frank couldn't answer. His throat had closed up. The SUV doors opened. V-doors. Dale stepped out first, then Lori, both smiling like they'd just come back from the grocery store instead of 15 years of silence. Dale crossed the yard like he owned it, arms spread wide. "Tommy, look at you, all grown up." Tommy set down the shovel, confusion written across his face. He didn't remember them. How could he? He'd been 8 when they left, mostly unconscious from fever and medication. Frank descended the porch steps slowly, putting himself between his son and his brother. "Frank." Dale's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Been too long." 15 years. Frank's voice came out flat. I know. Dale's hand on Frank's shoulder felt like a brand. "We've got so much to catch up on. That's why we're here." Lori appeared at Dale's elbow, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Real tears or fake, Frank couldn't tell anymore. "Tommy," she whispered. "My baby, you're so healthy." Tommy glanced at Frank, uncertain. The boy's whole life, Frank had told him, his mother loved him, that she'd left because the sickness was too hard to watch. Now here she was, crying and reaching for him, and Tommy, good-hearted, wanting to believe the best in people, stepped forward and let her hug him. Frank's stomach turned over. "We should go inside," Dale said. "Cold out here. Plus, there's someone we want you both to meet." He gestured to the SUV. A man in a gray suit emerged, carrying a briefcase. "This is Roger. He's helping us with some family matters." A lawyer. They'd brought a lawyer. Frank should have slammed the door right then, should have told them to get back in their fancy car and disappear for another 15 years. But Tommy was watching, hopeful in a way that broke Frank's heart, and refusing them entry would make Frank look cruel. "All right," Frank said. "Come in." Inside, Frank put out Mom's good china, the plates with the blue flowers she'd used for Sunday dinners. He'd meant it as respect, honoring their return, but now it felt like laying out weapons for his own execution. The pot roast had been in the oven since morning. He'd overcooked it, too nervous to think straight. They sat around the oak table where Frank had fed Tommy breakfast every morning for 15 years. Dale complimented the house, eyes tracking over everything like he was calculating values. Lori kept touching Tommy, his arm, his shoulder, his hand, staking claim to flesh she'd abandoned. "Tommy, you look wonderful," Lori said. "I always knew you'd pull through. Always." Tommy smiled, uncertain. "Thanks. I don't really remember much from back then." "You were so young," she said quickly. "So sick. It broke my heart, but I couldn't handle hospitals. The smell, the machines, watching you suffer. I had to leave for my own mental health." Mental health. Frank gripped his fork. He remembered begging her sister to contact Lori when Tommy spiked that 104 fever. He might not make it. She should come. The sister's response. "Lori can't handle it, Frank. I'm sorry." "We understand it was hard on everyone," Dale said smoothly. He was working his way through the pot roast like he hadn't abandoned a dying nephew. "But we're here now. We want to make amends. Be family again." "Family," Frank repeated. "That's right." Dale pushed his plate aside and pulled out a leather folder. "Which is why Roger's here. We've been talking to some attorneys about making sure everyone's protected. Property this valuable," he gestured around, "families should handle it together." Frank stared at the folder. Handle what together? Well, the house, the land. With the highway expansion, property values have jumped significantly. This place is probably worth, what, $380 now? Dale slid papers across the table. "We just want to make sure, if anything happens, everyone's taken care of. Fair distribution, legal protections, that kind of thing." Tommy leaned over to look. What is this? Just standard family documents, Roger the lawyer said. Medical power of attorney, property agreements. Your uncle's concerned about making sure you and your father have support if needed. Frank picked up the top page. Medical power of attorney, dated 15 years ago. His signature at the bottom, or something that looked like his signature. He'd signed so many forms back then, half dead from exhaustion and fear. Had he signed this? He couldn't remember. I don't recall, he started. You signed it at the hospital, Dale interrupted. When Tommy was first diagnosed. Emergency planning, remember? You were stressed, understandably, but we all agreed we needed legal safeguards in place. Frank's head swam. Maybe he had signed it. Those first months were a blur of forms and clipboards and doctors explaining things he couldn't process. But this felt wrong. The paper looked too clean, too new. We don't need to decide anything tonight, Dale said, standing. Just wanted to reconnect. Let you know we're here now. We want to help carry this burden. You've been alone too long, Frank. He said it like a kindness, like Frank had been suffering in isolation by choice, not because Dale and Lori had walked away and never looked back. At the door, Dale pulled Tommy into a hug. We'll get coffee soon, just us. I want to hear everything about college, your plans, okay? Tommy nodded. Yeah, okay. Lori kissed Tommy's cheek, leaving a lipstick mark. I've missed you so much. Then they were gone, taillights disappearing down the gravel road, and Frank stood in his kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the lingering smell of Dale's cologne. Too much of it, chemical and sweet, like rotting flowers. Tommy washed dishes in silence. Frank dried them. The quiet stretched until Tommy finally spoke. Dad? Yeah, son. Did you really never try to contact them after I got better? The dish towel twisted in Frank's hands. How did he answer that without sounding defensive, without sounding bitter, without crushing the hope in Tommy's voice that family could be good? It's complicated, Frank said. Tommy didn't look at him. They said you kept them away, that you wouldn't let them visit. Is that what they said? Kind of. Dale mentioned it in the driveway before we came in. Frank set down the towel, looked at his son, his healthy, alive, breathing son, and felt the first real crack in the foundation they'd built together. I never kept anyone away, Frank said quietly. They knew where we were. Tommy nodded, but something had shifted in his eyes. A seed of doubt, small but growing. After Tommy went to bed, Frank sat alone at the kitchen table. The papers Dale had left were spread in front of him. Legal documents, property valuations, that medical power of attorney with his signature at the bottom. Had he signed this? He pressed his palms against his eyes, maybe, probably. He'd been signing everything back then, desperate and terrified and so tired he could barely stand. But the date on the document nagged at him. And the notary seal, had there been a notary at the hospital that day? He couldn't remember. That was the problem. 15 years of exhaustion had blurred his memory until he couldn't trust his own mind. Upstairs, Tommy's bedroom door closed. Not a slam, just a soft click. Somehow, that was worse. Roger the lawyer showed up at 7 the next morning. Frank was making coffee in Mom's old percolator. The burble and hiss usually calmed him, but not today. Through the window, he watched the sedan pull up, watched Roger emerge with his briefcase and that practiced smile lawyers learn in school. Frank opened the door before Roger could knock. Mr. Donnelly, hope I'm not too early. Just had some follow-up questions about Tommy's medical history. Tommy's asleep. That's fine. These questions are for you. Roger was already moving past him into the living room, pulling out a notebook. Won't take long. The questions came fast and pointed, designed to sound reasonable but sharpened underneath. How many doctors had confirmed the leukemia diagnosis? Was Frank present for all of them, or had he received information secondhand? Had any doctor suggested the illness might be less severe than Frank believed? Was it possible stress had caused him to misunderstand the prognoses? Frank answered through clenched teeth, providing facts. Yes, multiple oncologists. Yes, he was present. No, they hadn't misunderstood. Stage 3 leukemia, high risk, 40% survival rate. His son had nearly died, multiple times. Roger wrote everything down, nodding like he was collecting evidence for a case Frank didn't know he was defending. Behind him on the stairs, Frank heard a creak. Tommy, listening. And you're healthy now? Roger called up, seeing Tommy. Fully recovered? Playing sports? Tommy descended slowly. Yeah, I'm fine now. Remarkable. Roger's tone made it sound suspicious. Some might say miraculous. His oncologist can provide full records, Frank said. We'll be requesting those, along with financial records showing medical expenses. Roger snapped his notebook shut. Thank you for your time. After he left, Frank looked out the window. Across the way, Martha Hendricks stood on her porch, watering dead winter plants. A ridiculous task, except Martha wasn't watering, she was watching. Their eyes met. She nodded once, then went inside. Sunday morning, Frank sat in his usual pew at church. 40 years, same spot, third row left. Reverend Patricia Mills began her sermon with announcements, then mentioned families in need of prayer. Several heads turned to look at Frank, not with compassion, with judgment. Coffee hour after service was worse. Frank stood alone by the cookie table while groups of people talked nearby, loud enough for him to hear. Well, Tommy looks perfectly healthy now. My sister's a nurse, says some parents exaggerate for sympathy, attention. Always thought he kept that boy too isolated. Now the family wants back in and suddenly there's problems? Frank left his coffee untouched and walked toward the door. Martha appeared at his elbow. I'll walk out with you, she said. Not a question. In the parking lot, she kept pace beside him. Don't listen to them. Hard not to. I was here, Martha said. I saw. Frank wanted to ask what she meant, but his throat was too tight. I kept records, Martha added quietly. Just so you know. Then she got in her car and drove away, leaving Frank standing there wondering what records, why records, and whether he was losing his mind. He saw it on the drive home, the for sale sign in his yard. Frank slammed the brakes, gravel spraying. The sign stood near the road, professional and official. 8 acres, prime development, call Cheryl Thompson Realty. A car pulled in behind him. Cheryl Thompson herself, a perky woman in her 50s with a clipboard and enthusiasm. Mr. Donnelly, perfect timing. I wanted to discuss staging. I didn't authorize this. Her smile faltered. Your brother said you'd discussed it. He signed the listing agreement yesterday. He what? She pulled out her phone, showed him a scanned document, his signature at the bottom, or something that looked like his signature. That's not... I didn't sign that. Oh. Cheryl's face went pale. I need to call my office. She backed away, phone to her ear, speaking rapidly. Frank stood by the sign, his hands shaking. A truck drove past, Jerry from the hardware store. Jerry slowed, stared at the sign, stared at Frank, then kept driving without waving. By the time Frank reached his house, Tommy was in the doorway. Dad, what's happening? There's a for sale sign. I know. Did you agree to sell? No. But they have paperwork. Frank looked at his son, saw the question in Tommy's eyes. Are you sure? Do you remember? I didn't sign anything, Frank said. Tommy nodded slowly, but the doubt was there now, visible and growing. That afternoon, Frank went to town for fence staples. The hardware store smelled like sawdust and machine oil. Familiar, usually comforting. Jerry stood at the counter, saw Frank, and called next to the customer behind Frank. Frank stepped forward. Jerry, I'm right here. Jerry's face was cold. Thought you'd be busy with family matters. The man behind Frank shuffled uncomfortably. Jerry rang up his purchase first, chatting about the weather, acting like Frank didn't exist. When Frank finally got his staples, he paid exact change and left. In his truck, his hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. The battery was dead. Of course it was. Everything was falling apart at once. A kid walked over, 12 years old, from 3 houses down, carrying jumper cables. My dad saw you from the window, sent me to help. The kindness nearly broke him. Frank gave the kid $20. The kid refused. Dad said no charge. You helped us last winter. Not everyone had turned. Frank held onto that thought like a drowning man holds driftwood. That evening, Cal Thompson called. Frank's fishing buddy, his lawyer when paperwork needed filing. Frank, something smells wrong about Dale's documents. Let me dig. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Come by tomorrow. At Cal's office the next afternoon, dusty law books, mounted bass on the wall, comfortable chaos. Cal pulled out records, Mom's estate file, life insurance policy. Your mother had a $50,000 policy, designated for Tommy's care. Look at the beneficiary. Frank read, Dale Donnelly, eldest son, back up to parents. Paid out 13 years ago, 6 months after Tommy's diagnosis. Cal showed the bank records. Single check, deposited to Dale's personal account, no transfers to you or Tommy. Frank stared at the numbers. I never saw anything. Because Dale cashed it and kept it. $50,000 meant for your dying son's medical bills. He stole from his nephew. The rage that filled Frank was cold and precise. Can we prove he knew it was for Tommy? Your mother wrote on the policy envelope for Tommy's medical care. Her handwriting. Dale had to have seen it. Frank's hands trembled. Why? Why would he do that? Cal pulled up more records. Dale filed for bankruptcy last year. Business failed. He's $180,000 in debt. House in foreclosure. He needs your property sale to survive. The pieces clicked together. Not generosity, desperation. Dale wasn't trying to help. He was trying to save himself and willing to destroy Frank to do it. What do we do? Frank asked. We build a case. But Frank, Cal's face was serious. This gets ugly. Are you ready for that? Before Frank could answer, his phone buzzed. Text from Dale. Buyer offering 20% over asking. Sign the papers. Everyone wins. Frank didn't respond. He sat in Cal's office as the December light faded, wondering how much more he could lose before there was nothing left. Frank didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m, he sat at the kitchen table with a calculator, property tax records, and real estate listings from similar farms. The numbers glowed in the dim light. If he sold and split 3 ways, that was roughly $127,000 each. Tommy could have a nest egg, something Frank never had. Frank could buy a small condo, retire without worry. Maybe Dale was right. Maybe this was the simple solution. He thought about carrying Tommy through snow to the truck, the boy's weight almost nothing. Thought about planting the oak trees with Mom, her voice saying, "These'll outlast us both." Thought about every midnight he'd sat on this porch, praying for one more day. It was just land. Tommy was what mattered, but land was proof those 15 years meant something. His phone rang at 8, Dale, cheerful. Frank, let's meet, just us. Coffee? Frank was too tired to fight. Where? Rosie's Diner, noon. Rosie's smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, a smell Frank usually loved. Today it turned his stomach. Dale was already in a booth, menu open, acting like they did this every week. Brother, Dale said warmly, you look tired. How about we order? He ordered for both of them without asking, a power play disguised as generosity. Frank, I know this is hard. Change always is. Dale leaned forward, earnest. But look at the facts. You're 60. You've carried this burden alone for 15 years. That property's too much for one person. The maintenance, the taxes, the upkeep. You've earned rest. He slid a folder across the table. Property comparisons, retirement condo listings, financial projections. Sell, split fairly, everyone gets security. Tommy gets a nest egg for his future. You get comfortable retirement. Lori and I, we just want to make amends, be family again, clean slate. The numbers looked good on paper. The condos looked pleasant, small, manageable, maintenance included. Think about it, Dale continued. No more worrying about furnaces and roofs and septic systems. Freedom. You could travel, relax, actually enjoy your 60s instead of working yourself into the ground. What's the rush? Frank asked. Dale's smile flickered. No rush, just market's hot right now. Values might drop if we wait. Commercial developers are eyeing this corridor. Strike while the iron's hot, you know? Translation. Sign before you figure out I'm lying. Let me think about it, Frank said. Of course. Talk to Tommy. See what he thinks. Family decision, right? Dale paid the check, another small claim of control, and stood. Don't think too long, though. Opportunities like this don't wait forever. In his truck, Frank opened the folder, read the proposed agreement, language that made it sound like Frank had been the sole decision-maker, keeping them away. A clause. All parties acknowledge prior miscommunications and agree to fresh start. Translation. Admit you kept us away. He looked at his property from the hill, the barn, the house, the land Mom had loved. Asked himself, is peace worth lying about what happened? Tommy was waiting when Frank got home. What did he say? Frank explained the offer. Watched hope bloom in Tommy's face. Dangerous, painful hope. Dad, that actually sounds reasonable. You could retire. We'd both have security. Maybe. And maybe, Tommy hesitated. Maybe this is a chance to heal as a family. I know they messed up, but people change, right? And families supposed to forgive. Frank heard, let them win, let it go. He couldn't argue without crushing that hope. Couldn't explain greed to someone who'd never experienced it. For 2 days, Frank walked the property boundaries, sat in the barn where he and Tommy had built things, measured what he'd lose, almost decided to accept. Then he called Dale. I'll consider your offer, but I need time. Dale's voice went sharp with eagerness. Fantastic. I'll have Cheryl draft the papers. Wait, I said consider, not agree. Right. But good to have paperwork ready for when you decide. Something in Dale's tone, the presumption, the certainty, made Frank's skin crawl. I'll call you back, Frank said coldly. Sure, but Frank, don't overthink this. Simple solution to a complex problem. After he hung up, Frank sat with the phone. Something had shifted. Dale didn't want compromise. He wanted surrender disguised as compromise. Tommy came home from class. What did he say? I need one more day to think. Tommy trusted him, nodded, went to his room. The next morning, Frank woke to noise outside, looked out the window and saw Cheryl Thompson at the for sale sign with her assistant, changing the banner to sold pending. Frank dressed and rushed outside. What is this? I haven't agreed to anything. Cheryl looked uncomfortable. Your brother said you'd sign the listing agreement yesterday. We have an offer, contingent on your signature by Friday. I didn't sign anything. Cheryl pulled out her phone, showed him an email. I'll call my office. Tommy appeared in the doorway, saw the sold banner. His face went pale. Dad, did you sign something? No, but they have paperwork. The doubt in Tommy's eyes was like a knife. Frank realized Dale had used that old power of attorney, or forged something new, and now Tommy was questioning whether Frank's memory was reliable. The worst violation yet, using Frank's exhaustion-blurred past against him. Dad, Tommy said quietly, what's happening? Frank looked at the sold sign, at his son's confused face, at Cheryl backing away with her phone. Your uncle's trying to steal everything, Frank said, and making me look crazy while he does it. His phone buzzed. Text from Dale. Exciting news. Buyers offering 20% over asking. Will all make out well? Frank didn't respond. Sat on his porch steps, defeat washing over him. Across the way, Martha's screen door slammed. She was walking over, purpose in her stride. I can't do this, Frank said when she reached him. I'm too old, too tired, too broken. Martha sat beside him. You're not broken. You're exhausted. There's a difference. I don't see one. The difference, Martha said, is broken things can't be fixed. Exhausted people just need help. She stood. Come to my house. 6 a.m. tomorrow. I need to show you something. Martha. 6 a.m., Frank. Don't be late. She walked back across the yard, leaving him sitting there, watching snow begin to fall on the sold sign, wondering if he had any fight left. Martha opened her door at 5:03 a.m. Frank looked terrible. Hadn't slept, hadn't shaved, eyes hollow. You look like hell, Martha said. I feel worse. Good. Means you're still feeling something. I was worried you'd gone numb. She pulled him inside, set a banker's box on the kitchen table with a heavy thud. Coffee first. She made it in his mother's old percolator, must have bought the same model. The familiar burble filled her kitchen while Frank sat, staring at the box. Martha, I'm done. I can't fight anymore. I'm not asking you to fight. She poured 2 cups. I'm asking you to remember. She opened the box, pulled out a photograph. Night vision quality, timestamp visible. 2:47 a.m., December 2010. Frank carrying a skeletal child through snow toward a truck. Tommy's face barely visible in the blankets, Frank's expression caught between determination and terror. Frank's breath caught. Where did you... I took it from my bedroom window. You made that run 17 times that winter. She pulled out more photos. This one's from the hospital waiting room, 6:15 in the morning. You'd been there all night. Photo after photo, Frank asleep in chairs, Tommy in a wheelchair, Frank pushing, empty driveways on Christmas mornings, Frank at the mailbox with return letters marked moved, no forwarding. The day they left, Martha said, I knew they'd come back someday, not out of love. People like that always show up when there's something to take, so I kept records. She showed him folders, chronological, labeled by year, hospital bills with only Frank's signature, payment receipts, witness statements she'd quietly collected, Dr. Sarah Chen, Nurse Rebecca, Reverend Patricia, Martha's own journal entries dated and detailed. December 24th, 2011, she read. No call from Tommy's mother. Frank told Tommy she sent her love. Saw Frank crying on porch after Tommy went to bed. Frank couldn't speak. The evidence of 15 years spread across Martha's table. Proof he hadn't imagined it, hadn't exaggerated, hadn't been wrong. Why? He finally asked. Why did you do this? Because I lost my Jamie to leukemia 20 years ago. I know what that fight looks like. Her voice cracked. And I know what abandonment looks like too. I couldn't save my son, but I could make damn sure your sacrifice wasn't erased by lies. A knock at the door. Cal Thompson, briefcase in hand. Martha called me, Cal said. Frank, I've found something else. That medical power of attorney Dale's using? The notary seal belongs to Susan Keene. She was my office notary. Good woman. Died in a car accident in 2008. Frank stared. And the documents dated 2010, 2 years after she died. Cal pulled out state records. This is fraud, criminal fraud. If Dale used this to access medical records, insurance information, property claims, he's facing felony charges. The three of them sat in Martha's kitchen as dawn broke outside. Evidence everywhere. The truth, documented and irrefutable. We can void the sale, Cal said. File civil suit for the insurance money. Press criminal charges. How long? Frank asked. Months, maybe years. Expensive, exhausting. Frank's head dropped. Another long fight. He wasn't sure he had it in him. Then the door opened. Tommy, still in his coat. I saw your truck, Dad. What's going on? He saw the table covered with evidence. Picked up the photo of himself at 8 years old, skeletal in his father's arms. I don't remember being that small, Tommy whispered. You were barely 60 pounds, Frank said. I carried you everywhere. Tommy looked at more photos, read witness statements, saw the timeline. 15 years of Frank's presence, Dale and Lori's complete absence. He picked up the insurance policy document, read his grandmother's handwritten note for Tommy's medical care. Uncle Dale took this? His voice was small. While I was sick? Frank nodded. Tommy's face changed. The doubt vanished, replaced by something harder. Understanding, clarity. What are we going to do? Frank looked at Martha, at Cal, at his son, at the evidence that proved he wasn't crazy, wasn't wrong, wasn't alone. We're going to tell the truth, Frank said. All of it. By afternoon, word had spread through town, the way small-town gossip does, faster than reason. Frank went to the hardware store for supplies. Jerry was at the counter. Frank, still cold, saw where the property sold. Good for Dale, stepping in to help. Jerry, that sale's a fraud. That's not what I heard. In the diner, Frank sat alone at the counter, the booth behind him, loud enough to hear and sir, my cousin's a realtor, says Frank was difficult about the whole thing. Control issues. Happens with single parents. Frank left his food untouched. In the parking lot, Jerry flagged him down. Look, Frank, I don't know what's true anymore. Then maybe ask me instead of believing Facebook. I'm just saying there's always two sides. There's truth and lies, Jerry, not two equal sides. Frank drove away, gripping the wheel. At home, Tommy was checking mail, an envelope, his scholarship ceremony invitation. December 20th, 2 p.m., local news coverage. Tommy was excited. Dad, the ceremony's next week. Frank tried to be happy for him, but his phone buzzed. Unknown number, he answered. Mr. Donnelly? This is about your emergency contact information for Thomas Donnelly. We're updating records for the scholarship ceremony. We've sent invitations to all listed contacts. Frank's stomach dropped. What contacts? You're listed as primary. Dale Donnelly is listed as secondary emergency contact from... Papers shuffled. Hospital records, 2010. They'd sent an invitation to Dale. After the woman hung up, Frank sat on his porch. Dale would be at the ceremony, with Tommy's moment of pride as his stage. His phone buzzed again. Text from Dale. Heard Tommy's got a ceremony coming up. So proud. We'll be there. Then another. Should be a family celebration. Time to put all this behind us. Translation. Dale was planning something, a public move at Tommy's ceremony. Frank called Cal. Dale knows about the ceremony. Then we use that, Cal said. Public venue, news coverage. We expose him there. I'm not ruining Tommy's day. You wouldn't be ruining it. You'd be protecting it. Cal's voice was firm. Dale's planning an ambush. Better we control the narrative. Martha called 10 minutes later. Cal told me. I'm in. I'll speak. Martha, I've been keeping records for 15 years for this exact moment, Frank. Let me use them. That night, Tommy asked about the texts from Dale. He's planning something at your ceremony, Frank said. Like what? I don't know, but we're going to be ready. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then, Dad, I believe you. About everything. I'm sorry I doubted. You got nothing to be sorry for, son. What are we going to do? Tell the truth. Publicly. Let everyone see the evidence. Tommy nodded. Okay, let's do it. 4 days until the ceremony. 4 days to prepare. Frank looked at Martha's banker's box, at Cal's legal files, at his son's determined face. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than exhaustion. He felt ready. The days before the ceremony blurred together. Martha turned her dining room into a war room, evidence organized chronologically, photos in presentation order, witness statements in binders. Cal coordinated with the ceremony organizers, got Martha listed as a special community speaker. Frank watched them work and felt something unfamiliar. Hope. But nights were different. Alone in his house after Tommy went to friends, Frank would walk through rooms full of ghosts, the kitchen where Dale had ambushed him, the living room where that lawyer had asked invasive questions. The third night, he ended up in Tommy's old sick room. Now just storage, door usually closed. He opened it, turned on the light. The hospital bed was still there. Oxygen tanks, nebulizer, IV stand. He'd meant to get rid of it all but never could. Proof maybe, or trauma, both. He sat on the bed, springs creaked under his weight. Found a box on the shelf. Tommy's childhood things, crayon drawings, get well cards from classmates that eventually stopped coming, hospital bracelets, plastic yellowed but names still legible. One drawing, me and Dad versus the monsters. Stick figures, Tommy small, Frank large with a shield, monsters with teeth, red crayon for blood, a child's understanding of their war. Frank held the drawing and the memories came like a flood. The worst night. Tommy 9 years old, fever 104.3, ambulance at 2 a.m., Frank following in the truck, praying, not like this, God, please not like this. The hospital waiting room, doctor saying next 48 hours critical. Calling Dale's number, disconnected. Calling Lori's sister. He might not make it. She should come. The sister's response. Lori can't handle it, Frank. I'm sorry. The hospital chapel at 4 a.m. Frank alone, bargaining with God. Take anything else. Take the house, the land, take my life if needed. Just let the boy live. Tommy survived. Frank aged 10 years and 2 days. Back in the present, Frank sat in the dark sick room. The questions came. Did I hold on too tight? Am I fighting for Tommy or for my pride? What if Dale's right? What if letting go is the kind thing? If I fight and lose, what does that teach Tommy? If I fight and win, but Tommy resents me, did I really win? The paralysis was complete. Every choice felt wrong. He was too exhausted to see clearly, too broken to trust himself. He must have fallen asleep in the chair because he woke gasping from a nightmare, carrying Tommy through snow, but his arms gave out, Tommy falling, disappearing into the drift, Frank digging but finding nothing. Dale's voice, you couldn't hold on. You never could. 4:47 a.m. Pre-dawn gray through the window. Frank stood, legs weak, hand on the doorknob, about to leave the room in the fight. Then, tires on gravel. Too early for legitimate visitors. He looked out. Martha's sedan, headlights off. She was getting out with that banker's box and a thermos, walking toward his house with purpose. How did she always know? The next 3 days passed in preparation. Tommy wrote his acceptance speech, honest about his journey, thankful for his father, practiced it until the words felt right. Martha rehearsed her own speech. Cal organized the evidence presentation. Frank's role, stay silent, let the truth speak. You don't have to do anything, Martha told him. Just stand there. That's enough. Jerry from the hardware store showed up the second night, awkward at the door. Frank, I've been hearing things about what really happened, and I should have asked you directly, before believing what I saw online. You coming to the ceremony? Frank asked. Yeah, I'll be there. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was something. Reverend Patricia called. Frank, I'm sitting front row, whatever you need. Young Jenny from next door. We're coming to support you. Anyone who lends out their snowblower to strangers is good people. Not everyone had turned. Frank held on to that. The morning of the ceremony, Frank stood in his bathroom shaving. His hands shook slightly. He put on his only suit, worn to Mom's funeral, Tommy's high school graduation, not worn since. Tommy appeared in the doorway. You look good, Dad. I look old. You look strong. They drove to the college in Frank's truck, radio playing old country, Neither changed the station, neither spoke. Both nervous. The auditorium parking lot was filling. 200 seats, local news van setting up, community gathering. Frank parked, sat for a moment. "You ready?" Tommy asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." They got out, crossed the parking lot. Dale's SUV pulled in at the same time, across the lot. Moment of eye contact, 30 yards apart. Dale's confident smile, Lori beside him, fidgeting with her jewelry. Their lawyer in the back seat, folder on his lap. Dale thought he was in control. Inside, Martha was already there. Front row, banker's box under her chair. Cal 3 rows back, briefcase at his feet. Reverend Patricia present. Jerry and his wife, Sam and Jenny. Community divided. Some supporting Frank, some believing Dale, most uncertain. The ceremony began. College president with welcoming remarks, 5 scholarships being awarded. First recipient, student with prosthetic leg, speech about adaptive sports. Applause. Second recipient, first-generation scholar, speech about parents' sacrifice. Emotional applause. Then, our next scholarship recipient overcame extraordinary challenges to achieve academic excellence. Please welcome Tommy Donnelly for the Overcoming Adversity Scholarship. Tommy walked to the stage, caught Frank's eye. Frank nodded. "You got this." At the podium, Tommy adjusted the microphone, looked out at the packed room, began. "I almost didn't make it to kindergarten, much less college. My childhood was hospitals and needles and being too weak to play. I don't remember a lot of it clearly. I remember being scared. I remember pain, but I remember my dad always being there." The audience quieted, leaning in. "I remember him sleeping in hospital chairs, carrying me when I couldn't walk, reading to me at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I remember being terrified I was going to die, and him promising I wouldn't." Tommy's voice cracked. "I'm standing here because one man refused to give up when everyone else walked away. This scholarship means I get to build a future. But my dad gave me the past 15 years when no one thought I'd have a future at all." He looked at Frank. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." Applause built, genuine emotion in the room. Then Dale stood, moved toward the aisle, lawyer trying to pull him back. Dale ignored him, walking toward the stage. Audience confused. Applause dying. "Tommy," Dale's voice loud, "we're so proud of you." Moving with open arms, playing to the crowd. "Your whole family is so proud. We've all been worried and supportive through your journey." Approaching the stage, Tommy paused, uncertain, seeing his uncle coming. Dale to the ceremony organizer. "I'm Tommy's uncle. Family should be part of this moment." Dale pulling out the legal folder. "Actually, there's some family business we should address. Tommy, your father and I have been working on—" Martha stood, voice cutting through. "Sit down, Dale." Surprised silence. Dale turning. "Excuse me, who are—" Martha to the organizer. "I'm Martha Hendricks. I'm listed as community speaker." The organizer, prearranged. "Yes, we have you scheduled." Martha walking to the stage, banker's box in her arms, set it on the podium with a heavy thud. Dale's face shifted, confusion to concern. Lori grabbing his arm. "Dale, who is that?" Dale, voice tight. "The neighbor?" Martha at the microphone, looked at the audience, then at Dale. "This won't take long, but it needs to be said." Projector screen behind her flickering to life. Cal with the remote, first image loading. Dale trying to recover. "This is completely inappropriate." Martha, finally looking at him. "You're right, it is inappropriate. So let me tell you what's really inappropriate." The first photo appeared, Frank carrying skeletal child Tommy through snow. Timestamp 2:47 a.m., December 2010. Audible gasps. Martha's voice, steady as stone. "This is what 15 years of love looks like." Martha didn't rush. She let the first photo sit on the screen, Frank carrying Tommy through snow at 2:47 a.m. Let the audience absorb it. The skeletal child, the father's face caught between determination and desperation. "This is Tommy at age 8, Martha said, 63 pounds, after an emergency room visit for respiratory crisis. His father carried him because Tommy couldn't walk from the truck to the house." Next image, Frank asleep in a hospital waiting room chair, medical chart visible on his lap. "This is one of the 100 nights Frank spent in that chair. Sometimes I'd bring him coffee at 5 a.m. and he'd still be there from the night before." More images cycling. Hospital waiting rooms, different dates. Tommy in a wheelchair, Frank pushing. Empty driveways at Christmas. Medical bills with Frank's signature highlighted. Payment receipts showing dates. Martha's voice never wavered. In 15 years, Frank Donnelly attended 347 medical appointments with Tommy, 89 emergency room visits, 14 hospital admissions, total of 203 days inpatient. He paid $218,000 in medical bills beyond insurance. He took 3 jobs to cover costs. He never missed a single treatment. The screen showed a timeline. Frank's presence, a solid line, across 15 years. Dale and Lori's line, blank, 0 contact. Dale tried to interrupt. You can't just... Martha didn't even look at him. You're absolutely right. It is inappropriate. It's inappropriate that you cashed your mother's $50,000 life insurance policy, money she designated specifically for Tommy's care, and never sent a dime to your dying nephew. The screen split. Insurance policy on the left, Mom's handwritten note visible. On the right, bank records showing Dale's deposit. The audience erupted in whispers, heads turning to look at Dale. That's a lie, Dale's voice cracked. The money was... It's inappropriate, Martha continued, voice rising slightly, that you forged a medical power of attorney using a notary seal from a woman who died 2 years before your document's date. New image. The forged document beside Susan Keene's death certificate. Dates highlighted in red. Death 2008, document 2010. Cal stood from his seat. I have the state notary records. Happy to provide them to anyone who wants verification. Dale's lawyer was already moving toward the exit, abandoning his client mid-disaster. It's inappropriate that you had 0 contact with this child for 15 years. No visits, no calls, no birthday cards, no Christmas presents, and you only returned when this property became valuable. Screen showing, timeline of silence, 5,178 days, 0 contact attempts, returned letters marked, moved, no forwarding, property value chart, $120K in 2010, $380K in 2025. Dale's arrival, 2 weeks after public appraisal. It's inappropriate that you posted on Facebook claiming Frank was controlling and had exaggerated Tommy's illness. Screen showing Dale's posts beside Tommy's actual medical records. Post. Some parents exaggerate for sympathy. Medical record. Stage 3 leukemia. High-risk category. 40% 5-year survival rate. A woman stood in the audience. Dr. Sarah Chen, Tommy's oncologist. I treated Tommy for 6 years. His condition was life-threatening. Without his father's unwavering dedication, Tommy would not have survived. That is documented medical fact, not exaggeration. Applause for Dr. Chen. The audience turning fully against Dale now. Reverend Patricia stood. I was at that hospital chapel more midnights than I can count. I never once saw Dale or Lori there. But I saw Frank, praying, exhausted, alone, never giving up. Jerry from the hardware store stood. Frank's phone number's been in our church directory for 20 years. Dale could have called any time. He chose not to. Young Jenny stood. We've been neighbors 6 months. The man we know, who lent us his snowblower, helped us move, brought us soup when we were sick, that's not a man who lies or controls. That's a man who shows up. One by one, people standing, supporting Frank, the community correcting itself. Martha set down her remote, looked directly at Dale for the first time. I have 15 years of documentation here. Photographs, bills, witness statements, medical records, financial analysis. Anyone who wants to verify anything I've said, come find me after. She paused. You abandoned a dying child. You stole money meant for his care. You forged legal documents. You slandered a good man. And you came back only when there was money to take. Dale tried to speak. No words came. Lori was crying, real tears now, not the practiced kind, genuine shame breaking through. I was scared, Lori said, standing. Her voice shook. I couldn't handle seeing my son sick. The room went silent. Martha's voice softened slightly but remained firm. Fear is understandable, Lori. Abandonment is a choice. And coming back 15 years later to claim credit and money, that's greed. Lori collapsed into her seat, the truth too heavy to stand under. But Dale kept trying. We tried to stay in touch. Frank kept us away. Cal stood again. Phone records show Frank's number unchanged for 20 years. No blocked calls, no refused contact, because there were no contact attempts. Martha stepped away from the podium. I'm done. The evidence speaks for itself. The ceremony organizer looked uncertain. Should we continue? All eyes went to Tommy, still on stage. Tommy looked at Dale, then at Frank. The choice moment. Dale reaching toward him. Tommy, Please, you have to understand. Tommy walked down from the podium, past Dale without a word, didn't stop, didn't acknowledge, complete dismissal. Dale's hand reaching. Tommy, I'm your uncle. I'm family. Tommy kept walking, reached his father's row. Frank stood uncertain. Tommy stopped in front of him. Long moment of eye contact. Then Tommy hugged his father, tight and long. The microphone didn't catch his whisper, but Frank heard it. I'm sorry I doubted you. Nothing to be sorry for, son. They stood together, Tommy's arm around Frank's shoulders, facing the audience as a unit. The applause started slow. Dr. Chin first, then Patricia, Martha, building gradually, becoming a standing ovation. Not for the drama, for them, for 15 years of showing up, for truth over comfort, for love proven through action. Dale stood alone in the aisle, hand still extended. Lori behind him, mascara running, his lawyer already gone. Dale looked around, saw every face turned against him, tried one more time. This isn't... She's lying. You don't understand. No one was listening. His voice broke. I'm family. I'm his uncle. I have rights. Martha quietly but clearly. You have the rights you earned, which is none. Dale turned to leave. Lori followed, stumbling in her heels, walking up the aisle toward the exit. The audience parted, creating a path. No one touching, no one blocking, just moving away. Silent rejection, more powerful than jeers. At the door, Dale turned back one last time, saw Tommy and Frank embraced, Martha beside them, community supporting, everything he could never have or understand. To Martha as he passed, you'll regret this. Martha, unbothered, no, I really won't. The door closed behind them. The auditorium exhaled collectively. They were gone. The organizer cleared his throat. Well, shall we continue with the celebration? Nervous laughter, tension breaking. Tommy returned to the podium. Can I finish what I was saying? He completed his speech, thanked his father, accepted his scholarship plaque. Standing ovation again, this time for him, for his achievement, for surviving and thriving. The news crew had captured everything. This was the story that would air. Truth, not Dale's lies. After the ceremony, people approached Frank. Hardware store Jerry first. Frank, I'm so sorry. I should have known better. Should have asked you directly. It's all right, Jerry. Lies are easier to believe than hard truths. It's not all right, but I'll do better. Others following, apologies, support. The woman from church who'd shared Dale's Facebook post. I'm ashamed. I'm sorry. Frank accepted them all with grace. Thank you for being here today. Not forgiveness necessarily, but allowing people a path back. The news reporter approached. Mr. Donnelly, can we get a statement? My son just received a scholarship for overcoming adversity. That's the story. Everything else is just noise. But the allegations against your brother, the evidence speaks for itself. I don't need to add to it. Frank walked away with dignity, Tommy beside him. Outside in the parking lot, Cal was on his phone. Yes, property sale voided effective immediately. Forged documents will be submitted to DA tomorrow. Civil suit for insurance proceeds next week. To Frank afterward, sale's dead, property stays yours, Dale's facing fraud charges. What about the insurance money? We'll recover it, plus interest. Could take 6 months, but it's yours. Tommy's, Frank corrected. It was meant for him. Martha joined them, exhausted but satisfied. You did good work, Frank said. We did good work. All of us. They stood in the parking lot as the December sun set early, exhausted, vindicated. Not triumphant, too much had been damaged for that, but clean, the wounds could heal now. Tommy, what happens now? Frank, now? We go home. Tommy, our home. Frank nodded. Our home. They drove away together. The war was over. The question remained, what does life look like after? The local news aired the story that night. Frank and Tommy sat in the living room, volume low, watching themselves on screen. The reporter had edited it well. Tommy's speech, Martha's evidence, the community witnesses, Dale's exit, no sensationalism, just truth. The anchor's closing. Dale Donnelly could not be reached for comment. The district attorney's office confirms a fraud investigation has been opened. Tommy muted it. How do you feel? Frank considered. Tired, but different tired, like I can finally rest. His phone had been ringing all evening. He'd turned it off after the 5th call. Let them leave messages. Tonight was for him and Tommy. A knock at the door. Martha with a casserole dish. Thought you boys could use dinner. They ate at the kitchen table, the same table where Dale had ambushed them 3 weeks ago. Different now. No tension, just Martha's chicken and rice, hot rolls, comfortable silence. Dale and Lori left town, Martha said. Cheryl the realtor saw them loading up this afternoon, heading west, she thinks. Good riddance, Tommy muttered. No, Frank said quietly. Not good riddance, just gone, and that's enough. Martha nodded, understanding the difference. After dinner, she stayed for coffee. Cal stopped by with legal updates. Property sale officially voided. Dale's documents flagged as fraudulent, civil suit filed for the insurance money. Could take 6 months to recover the funds, Cal said, but it's a solid case. You'll get it back. And Dale? Frank asked. DA's reviewing. Might not pursue extradition if he stays gone. Cost versus benefit. Cal shrugged. Sometimes justice isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just they go away and you get to keep living. Frank accepted that. He didn't need Dale in prison, didn't need revenge, just needed his life back. 2 days later, Sunday morning, Frank returned to church. Reverend Patricia saw him enter and smiled. After the service, during coffee hour, people approached naturally. No more awkwardness. Jerry pulled him aside. Committee's asking if you join the church council, help with building maintenance decisions. Let me think about it, Frank said. The old Frank would have refused automatically. This Frank was learning to say maybe. A week after the ceremony, Tommy made his announcement over breakfast. Dad, I'm deferring grad school. Just 1 semester. Frank's stomach dropped. No, you're not sacrificing your future because... Let me finish. Tommy's voice was firm. Not sacrifice. Choice. I want to spend spring semester working on this place with you. Maybe start that workshop business we used to talk about. Build something together. Tommy, you gave me 15 years when I needed you. I want to give you 6 months by choice. Building something instead of just surviving. Frank struggled with the emotion. You're sure? I've never been more sure. They shook hands across the table. It became a hug. The workshop idea grew legs. The old garage could be converted, workspace, tools, maybe a small showroom for custom furniture. Martha knew a contractor who owed Frank favors. Cal helped with the business license paperwork. When the insurance settlement came through, $72,000, the original $50K plus interest, Tommy insisted on splitting it. Half for the workshop, half for your retirement fund? That's your money. It's our money, family investment. Frank accepted, learning to receive, not just give. Christmas Eve came. Frank's kitchen filled with chosen family. Martha brought pies, Cal brought wine, Reverend Patricia brought homemade bread. The young couple from next door stopped by after visiting her parents. Tommy made Mom's Christmas soup, called Aunt Sarah for the recipe, got the spices right. The house smelled like childhood, like better times. They gathered around the table. Martha raised her glass. To family, the kind you choose. To family, they echoed. After dinner, Frank and Tommy and Martha sat on the porch despite the cold. Blankets and coffee, snow falling soft and clean. Church bells rang at midnight. Christmas Day officially. You know what I've learned in 70 years? Martha asked. What's that? Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up and stays. Frank looked at her, at Tommy, at the house standing solid behind them, at the property that stayed theirs, at the peace that came not from winning, but from truth being heard. Merry Christmas, family, Martha said. Merry Christmas, Frank and Tommy answered together. Inside, the lights were warm. Outside, snow covered where the for sale sign used to be, covering old wounds, clean slate. Tommy eventually went inside. Martha headed home. Frank sat alone for a moment longer, not lonely, just quiet, taking it in, not the property, but the peace, the knowledge that survival had led to something worth having. Tommy's voice from the doorway. Dad, you coming in? It's freezing. In a minute, just taking it in. He stood finally, turned off the porch light, went inside where his family waited. The war was over. The building could begin. March came with mud and hope. The snow melted, revealing grass that needed work but would green up. Frank stood in the barn-turned workshop watching contractors frame out the workspace. Tommy was learning to use the table saw under Frank's patient guidance. Feel the grain, Frank said. Don't fight it. No, you make it look easy. 40 years practice. You'll get there. The sign went up on a Tuesday. Donnelly & Son Woodworks. Simple, honest, true. Their first customer was the church. Reverend Patricia wanted new pews for the chapel. "Something that'll last," she said, "like the man building them." Frank quoted her a fair price. She tried to pay more. He refused. "Fair's fair," he said. The work was good, slow and steady. Frank taught Tommy the old techniques: dovetail joints, proper finishing, how to read wood like a language. They'd work until 6, close up, walk back to the house together. Martha often had dinner waiting. Or they'd eat at her place. Easy rotation, family rhythm. One evening, Tommy asked the question Frank had been waiting for. "Do you forgive them, Uncle Dale and Mom?" Frank set down his coffee. Thought about it honestly. "I don't know if forgive is the right word. I don't hate them. I just release them. They don't get space in my head anymore." That's probably healthier than forgiveness." "Maybe." Frank looked at his son. "Your mom loved you, Tommy. She just loved her own comfort more. And Dale, he was always weak. Weakness makes people cruel." "Do you think they'll ever understand what they did?" "Don't know. Not my job to teach them." Frank's voice was firm. "My job was to raise you right. That job's done." Tommy smiled. "Job's never done, Dad. You're still teaching me." "Then I guess I'm still employed." Orders trickled in. Word of mouth in a small town works both ways. The gossip that had hurt them now helped. "Donnelly does good work. Honest man. Fair prices." Jerry from the hardware store sent customers their way. Reverend Patricia recommended them to other churches. The young couple next door told their friends. One Saturday, a woman came in asking about a custom bookshelf. She'd heard about them from Dr. Chen. She said, "You're the kind of man who builds things to last." Tommy handled the consultation professionally, took measurements, discussed wood types and finishes, scheduled the build. After she left, Frank felt a swell of pride. "You're good at this. I learned from the best." April brought Tommy's grad school acceptance letter. "Starting in the fall, engineering program, full ride renewed." "I'll come home weekends," Tommy said. "Help with big orders." "You sure? Don't want to hold you back." Tommy looked at the workshop, at his father, at what they'd built together in 3 months. "Dad, this isn't holding me back. This is building forward." Frank understood the difference now. One evening, Frank's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Dale's voice, shaky, defeated. "Tommy, it's your uncle. I know I messed up. I know you're angry. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I was desperate and scared, and I made terrible choices. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Take care of yourself. And your dad." He hung up. Frank stood holding the phone. Tommy had heard. It was on speaker. "What do you think?" Tommy asked. "I think he's sorry he got caught. Maybe sorry he hurt you, but not sorry enough to have acted different if he'd known he'd get away with it. Should I call him back?" "Do you want to?" "No, not really." "Then don't. You don't owe him closure." Tommy deleted the voicemail. They returned to the evening, planning the next day's work, discussing a custom order, living their lives. Dale became irrelevant, the real ending for him. Not drama or prison or revenge, just absence, just not mattering anymore. Late April, Frank took his morning coffee on the porch. Ritual restored. The land was greening, the workshop hummed with possibility. Tommy's truck was in the driveway. He'd stayed the weekend to finish the church order. Across the way, Martha's porch light came on. She waved. He waved back. The sound of a hammer from the workshop. Tommy, working early, church bells in the distance. Sunday morning, Frank sipped his coffee. Thought about 15 years of fighting just to survive. Thought about 3 months of learning to live. The difference was everything. Some battles you win by surviving long enough for truth to surface. Some victories don't come with parades. They come with soup on the stove and plans for tomorrow. Those are the ones that last. Tommy's voice calling from the workshop. "Dad, come look at this joint. Did I do it right?" Frank set down his coffee, stood. His body still ached some mornings, but his spirit was light. "Coming, son." He walked toward the workshop, toward his boy, toward the future they were building together. Spring continued. Life continued. And that was enough. June arrived with heat and promise. Tommy graduated with his bachelor's degree, a ceremony Frank attended with Martha and Cal. No drama this time, just pride, an accomplishment, and a future opening wide. In the fall, Tommy would start his master's program. But for now, summer belonged to the workshop. Orders had picked up enough that Frank hired Jerry's nephew part-time. The kid was 17, good with his hands, reminded Frank of Tommy at that age. "You're building something here," Cal said one evening, stopping by with fishing poles. "Not just furniture. Legacy." Frank hadn't thought of it that way, but watching Tommy teach the kid how to sand properly, patient and clear, Frank saw it, the passing down, the continuation. "Suppose I am," Frank said. They went fishing, didn't catch much, didn't matter. One Saturday, Martha knocked on the workshop door. "Got someone who wants to meet you." A man in his 50s stood behind her, nervous, familiar somehow. "I'm David," he said. "I was in the hospital with Tommy 20 years ago. Different cancer, but my son didn't make it." Frank's throat tightened. "I saw the news story," David continued, "about what you did, how you fought, and I needed to tell you something." His voice broke. "Seeing Tommy alive, healthy, building this, it helps. It helps me believe my son's fight mattered too, that the battle was worth fighting even though we lost." Frank didn't know what to say, pulled the man into a hug instead. "Your son's fight mattered," Frank said. "Every day mattered. Every moment you were there mattered." David nodded, couldn't speak, just held on. After he left, Martha said quietly, "There are others like him, parents who fought and lost. You give them something by surviving, by building this life. You prove the fight was worth it." Frank had never considered that. His story wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd fought that same war, won or lost. "I'm just living," Frank said. Exactly. August brought the final legal settlement. The insurance money had already come. Now the district attorney closed the fraud investigation. Dale hadn't returned to Indiana. No extradition warrant justified for the cost. Case closed. "He got away with it," Tommy said. "Did he?" Frank looked at his son. "He's broke, bankrupt, reputation destroyed, can't come home, living in some cheap apartment out west, looking over his shoulder. And we're here, workshop successful. You're starting grad school, we've got family." He gestured to Martha's house across the way. "Who got away with what?" Tommy considered. "When you put it that way, exactly." Justice wasn't always a gavel and a sentence. Sometimes it was just living well while your enemies live poorly. September. Tommy packed for graduate school. 3 hours away, close enough to come home weekends. The truck was loaded. Frank stood in the driveway, hands in pockets, trying not to be emotional. "You call if you need anything," Frank said. "I will. And you come home whenever you want. This is always home." "I know, Dad." They hugged. Tommy got in the truck, started the engine. "Hey," Frank called. "I'm proud of you. You know that?" "I know. I'm proud of you too." Tommy drove away. Frank watched until the truck disappeared, felt the emptiness, but different than 15 years ago. This emptiness was right, natural. A son growing up and moving forward but coming back. Roots and wings. Martha appeared beside him. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay. He'll be back Friday." "I know." They stood together watching the dust settle on the gravel road. "You did good, Frank. Raised a fine young man." "We did good," Frank corrected. "Couldn't have done it without you." Martha smiled. "Well, I'm not going anywhere." "Good, because Sunday dinners at your place are better than mine." She swatted his arm. They walked back toward their houses, easy and comfortable, family. That evening, Frank sat on his porch alone. First time in months, without Tommy across the hall. But the house didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. The workshop stood solid. Orders scheduled through November. Jerry's nephew turning into a skilled craftsman, the land green and growing, property secured, reputation restored, son thriving. Frank thought about Dale sometimes, wondered where he was, how he was living, but the thoughts came less often now, didn't hurt anymore, just distance. He thought about Lori, hoped she'd found some peace with herself, doubted it. Some people never do. Mostly he thought about what came next, the orders to fill, Tommy's weekend visits, Martha's dinners, Cal's fishing trips, the church council meetings he'd finally agreed to join, the ordinary, beautiful moments that made up a life. His phone buzzed. Text from Tommy. "Made it. Dorm small but good. Miss you already. See you Friday." Frank replied, "Miss you too. Drive safe Friday. Love you." 3 words he said more easily now. 15 years of showing it had made saying it easier. The sun set behind the workshop. Frank finished his coffee. Stood slowly, joints creaking but heart light, turned off the porch light, went inside. Tomorrow he'd open the workshop at 7, train the kid, fill orders, build things that would last. Tonight he'd sleep well. For the first time in 15 years, he'd sleep without fear. That was victory enough. There are some battles you don't win with fists or lawyers or dramatic showdowns. You win them by waking up every morning and choosing to show up, by refusing to let lies define what's real, by standing firm when the whole world seems to be pushing you down. Frank learned that truth the hard way. He learned that family isn't born, it's built. Built in hospital chairs at 3 in the morning, built in porch conversations over coffee, built in showing up with evidence when someone's about to quit, built in choosing someone publicly when it would be easier to hedge. He learned that dignity isn't never being doubted, it's knowing who you are when everyone else has forgotten. He learned that some victories don't come with parades, they come with soup on the stove and plans for tomorrow, with your son calling from college just to say he misses you, with neighbors waving from across the street, with wood shavings on your boots, and a full order book and church bells on Sunday morning. Frank sits on his porch this October morning, 1 year after Dale's return, 1 year after the war began. Tommy's truck is in the driveway, home for the weekend. Martha's light is on across the way. The workshop waits for Monday's work. The coffee's hot. The air's crisp. The land is his, not because he won some legal battle, though he did, not because his enemies were punished, though they were, but because he stood firm, told the truth, let love prove itself through action, not words. Inside the workshop, father and son will bend over wood, building something that will outlast them both. Outside, autumn continues. And that's enough. That's always been enough.